Hi, Sheriff.
Well, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Walton County Sheriff Mike Adkinson, along with our Public Affairs Coordinator Extraordinaire, Ms. Corey DeBridnia, and this is the Sheriff Live. So, for those of you that don't know, we're in Walton County, Florida, halfway between Pensacola and Tallahassee. We run from the Alabama line to the Gulf of Mexico, and this is kind of our town hall meeting. It's our chance to talk to my bosses, citizens of Walton County. And we try to do this like twice a month where we can and really just answer any questions you may have or tell you about what's going on in the county. But we also address bigger questions. There's something at large outside the county, some major issue we want to talk about. We try and answer your questions. We don't guarantee the right answer. We guarantee that we'll try and get you one. So it's all about the effort there. Anyway, a lot of stuff been going on since the last few weeks. We're about to get in the busy time of year, spring break for us, one of the busier times of the year for sure. And again, it has been crazy, crazy busy around here. So
yes.
A lot of that's good stuff, some bad stuff, but at the end of the day, that's our business to deal with all this stuff. So if you have any questions, fire them up. Give Corey a little grace tonight. She's running this show by herself. So what I always say to you is I don't see your questions or your comments, so I don't know what you're asking, and we'll try to get to them as much as we can. If you've asked a question that you don't see it get answered, sometimes it's because it was answered early on, and we, just for the sake of redundancy, we try not to go back and answer them multiple times, if possible. Sometimes we'll address it twice, but anyway. So Corey, what we got tonight?
There might be a little bit of a lag.
We're running a little bit of a lag.
Answering the questions. Depending on how many questions we get, we might be running a little bit behind.
Yeah, for sure.
So first things first, we've been off air for about a month, and we've had a couple of indictments come down on big cases. The first of which was the Sandestin shooting, and the second was a homicide in our county. We actually did a little bit of work in Crestview on that one. But what does it speak to the case itself about the indictment of the Sandestin shooter?
Yeah, so let's talk about it, because some of the questions we get is, we've kind of got the point in this world, I think, where everything has become a conspiracy, right? So got to slow down. I and this office, we're in the business of trying to do things the right way, right? And so in this case, we needed to slow down the Sandestin shooter case, because you have victims, you have someone who lost their family member, you have multiple people shot at, you have other individuals hurt. He was charged with an open count to start with. Mm-hmm. So this gave us time to make sure that we got all our ducks in order, that we did a thorough investigation, that we answered questions that can come up at trial, to make sure the prosecution have everything they have to get a successful outcome, a successful verdict, as much as you can in this kind of situation. And so it's about professionalism, it's about follow through, and it's about making sure that we do it the right way and not get in a hurry. And I think in today's world, of internet quickness, if you will, there's this belief that if it's not being done immediately, nothing's being done, and that's not the case. It's more important to be right than it is to be fast. And I think these indictments show that the prosecution felt confident that they had what they need to charge capital crimes here.
Yeah. And so what a complex case to have to investigate too. And, credit to our Criminal Investigations Bureau. They've had some really complex, difficult cases.
Very much so.
Kind of unfurl.
And I think probably one of the things maybe is not necessarily fully understood a lot of times by the public at large is the amount of people it takes to bring a case together. So, if you'll go back to Sandestin, notwithstanding patrol deputies, there's 20 plus people out there working. That's not the people even involved with it. That's 20 plus people, crime scene people, public information, investigators. There's a lot going on there. Patrol deputies doing canvass and follow-up. That doesn't take into account South Walton Fire District. Folks, they have on scene. There's a lot of people working. Yeah. But better to put resources on problems and do it correctly.
Yeah, for sure. Our first question is from Sergeant Josh Bennett. Is there any chance you can talk to your people at FDOT and have them cycle the lights differently at Highway 20 and Business 331 for school traffic? in the mornings. Dropping the kiddos off makes you want to rage a little bit.
Yeah, boy, somebody's due for their mental health evaluation there, Sarge. No, I think so. We absolutely can send something out there, Josh, and see what we can try and do to get that cycled out. I thought he was going to ask about the traffic on 98 going east into Bay County, because that's a point of rage too. I got some of that in me as well.
Yes.
That traffic is, if you don't know, that traffic is backed up there because of construction down in Carolina. That is, there's nothing we really have control in with that. But to Sergeant Bennett's point about the drop off, yeah, we'll take a look and see if we can do something about the cycle there.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I noticed it at 283 the other night too, trying to get across that. There was not enough time on the light. There was not enough time to traverse the intersection.
Yeah.
And you got 8 cars backed up, and that really can get people frustrated.
Yeah, I live right across the street from my elementary school, so I get it. Beth Niblett says hello. She works at your jail. Philip Canterbury, my wife has seen more of a police presence on 331 South. We just want to say thank you. Well, thank you, Philip.
Glad to hear that.
Richard Yohe says, is this 13-year-old from last night going to be charged for gun possession? He'll
be charged again. He was arrested last night, so there's a criminal citation or criminal charges. Not whether I agree with it or don't agree it, but they won't hold a juvenile in custody for that. I think that's in there lies part of the problem. But yes, he's got another charge coming as well. So.
Okay. And then Gina Lyon on YouTube is asking, why did you set up a sting operation at Freeport Elementary School the first day of the school year? And I think what she's talking about is Operation Bluebird.
It's not a sting. It's actually no surprise. We advertise it for weeks in advance that if you're speeding in a school zone, I think our children are our most precious resource. If it was a sting, it's pretty poor, because we literally put it out on Facebook and in the newspaper, Operation Bluebird. It's happened every year for the last, probably decade, that, we really emphasize traffic enforcement in the school zones, particularly at the start of school. So we just get people in that mindset, hey, look, school's back in. The holidays, sometimes those lights go off. So, yeah, we do that every year. No surprise there.
Yeah. Josh Bennett says he's given up going at a reasonable pace on 98.
Yeah.
I think all of us have.
Same.
Heather Hawley, I've noticed other counties posting about nuisance homes.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this here. Is that a reality in Walton County? And if so, can you explain the criteria?
Sure, there's clearly some nuisance homes here. We get asked about this actually fairly frequently. And we're talking to a gentleman in the Hogtown community off of the Chat Holly community about this very issue recently. That's a code issue. And so what happens is the county has to have code or ordinances that allow for something called nuisance abatement, which is, where you get into everything from drug houses to litter to, whatever type of code violation there is, but the county has to do that. And so
what are some examples of that? Does it depend on the calls for service there?
Well, it can, and that can contribute to it, but there has to be an ordinance in place. There has to be a nuisance abatement ordinance in place. And so what I would say is reach out to your county commissioners if you have an interest in that. We brought that forward, probably 8 or 9 years ago, trying to get some codes to help with nuisance abatement. I think it's actually a good thing. I think we probably get that call the most in regard to drug houses. So where we've done things or loud music in houses, things of that nature, those fall under nuisance and nuisance abatement. I actually think it's a really good thing, and it's the sign of a kind of a well-run county to develop those kind of things.
Okay.
And so I think that I think you would find the commissioners open to hearing that now. So yeah, reach out to them and email them. I actually think it's a good thing. So the way that works, just because she asked that, and so for instance, if you had a nuisance house, one that there was constantly litter, loud parties, constant police calls, and that they could start a process by which they find those individuals to try and get the situation rectified. It's just another tool.
Yeah, great question. And Heather said she was, in this instance, she was talking about the drug houses that you were referencing.
Yeah, I mean it's a problem we really would like the nuisance abatement, because we don't like going out there that many times either.
Heather Scholes on Facebook, was the 13-year-old allowed to drive home?
No, he was not. We arrested him for driving, so certainly wouldn't allow him to drive home. No, he was released to custody of his parents.
Okay. So. Etta Elizabeth, does Walton have any new spring break regulations like Bay County does?
I don't know that Bay County has any new spring break regulations, so that Are you familiar with something in Bay County that I'm not?
They ban the alcohol on the beaches during spring
gotcha.
break,
Okay, so
things
they-
like that.
yeah.
I think that Panama City Beach has talked in the past about a curfew,
Yeah.
but because they're a municipality,
Right. No,
that
so,
works for
so the
them.
short version is no. There's no new regulations in place. There are different practices we're going to take in. One of the things I think we've talked about quite a bit is closing accesses where we're having problems, so like places like Dogwood and things like that, and to make sure that people are not congregating in large crowds on the beach. You can't close all the beaches in Walton County for 6 weeks because we don't want them there. That's not reasonable, nor is it appropriate. However, what we need to do is to make sure that we don't let crowds get too large on the beach or too far out of hand. At the same time, we don't want these crowds running through the neighborhood. So there's a little bit of a balance. One of it is we're going to close these accesses that we've had problems in the past, and we'll close them as necessary. We will, if we
To
start
stop
getting a
traffic
crowd,
from
to
getting
stop
onto
traffic
the
from getting
beach.
onto the beach. And if we see that the crowd is getting too big at any public beach access, we'll close the access as needed. So a couple of them we already know that we're going to have to deal with up front. That's kind of the general approach to this. It's not really an ordinance change. It's just going to be a philosophy change. And the other thing is to anywhere that we get these crowds, we're going to probably put deputies in the crowd. And we're talking about using some things like cameras and otherwise to help remind people that we're paying attention.
Yeah. Derek Gossett, if reelected to his position, do you commit to completing the full term? There are whispers of a halfway handoff.
News to me. I'd sure like to know about that in advance too. Yeah. So you listen. Yeah,
But
I don't
all
run to do it.
joking
Yeah,
aside,
no, all joking aside.
you're always
I always.
succession planning. Yeah.
I think where that comes from, Derek, is quite frankly, and I think any professional, elected official, CEO or otherwise, military, any of this stuff has an absolute moral obligation to prepare people to take over. I've never made any bones about that. Ultimately, voters in Walton County get to make that decision. I don't get to make that decision.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things when you elect somebody is you have this obligation to start preparing people to be ready to lead. Now, the voters will have to decide who that is, what that looks like in the future. But yeah, I think where some of this comes from is we actively start pushing people into leadership roles, taking on additional training, taking on additional responsibility. And I think that's I absolutely think the right thing to do, but I have no intention of, doing an election and step down or anything of that nature. So, but I do think, and I want to go back to this. I think every entity in the county, I think every elected entity otherwise should absolutely be preparing people to replace them. I think that's the appropriate thing. And listen, if you're scared of the people that work with you, you really have no business being in this. So it's a good question though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Brittany Jones.
That was a long way of saying yes, by the way. Yes, I don't have any intention of it.
He is committing to completing the full term.
Yeah. No, now listen. If I get struck down by a lightning bolt, then you can't hold me to that one. So, to my knowledge, no, I have no plans.
Okay, yeah. Brittany Jones. Yeah. Have there been any updates on mirror globes across from hospital for hospital workers turning left onto Mac Bayou? Okay. That's a good question. Actually,
we've asked about that multiple times. That's a DOT. Mm-hmm. They have not graced us with an answer yet, but we agree with you. The other thing was I think she's talking about we talked about doing the mirrors to try and help them on that. I don't.
Workers turning left onto Mac Bayou.
No. So they could see on that as well too. Kind of caught me flat-footed on that. I have to double check, and I promise we'll email you back an answer. I was actually thinking about the light right there. She's talking about the mirror. I actually remember that now. That was probably 4 or 5 months ago she asked about that. So I apologize. We'll have to get you an answer back on that.
And Brittany, pinned in this chat in the comment section is our email. Yeah. And just send me an email. I'm making a note to follow up with them about it. But yes, we'll reach out to... I'm not sure if we would need FDOT's permission on Mac Bayou.
I apologize. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
We'll have to get you an answer.
It could be the county, so we'll reach out to both and we'll let you know.
Yeah.
Heather said, "Thank you for explaining about the nuisance."
It's a good thing. Again, I want to reiterate. I think the nuisance. I think that's a great thing for the county commissioners to address, and then with the county administrator and develop some codes that make sense.
Yeah.
I think it's good stuff.
Yeah. Etta Elizabeth says, "We're praying for you all. We love spring break as far as the work brings."
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a balance, right? It's a balance.
On YouTube, D&D Drywall Specialties says, can you help with speeding on Highway 20 East and West? You'll be happy to know. I spent a few hours the other day riding with Deputy Jamie Reagan. I know that district has its own traffic unit now. And Jamie, just within the first 30 or 40 minutes, we had 2 people pulled over. So he is, I know that they're getting after it there.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 problems. I think we all know this. One is speed. One is a frustration level with people that are slowing traffic down, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's some of that. I think we've stopped. Gosh, I know I've stopped people on that road here in the last month. It's a dangerous road, and there's a lot of traffic. Certainly have come with the expansion of Freeport. We're just going to have to stay after it. But we have a traffic unit assigned to that area. They're working it really heavy, really heavy. And that's not a sting, because somebody mentioned that. It's not a sting. They're out there working.
Yeah. Stephen Chansey, hello, Sheriff.
Hello.
How does the problem at the southern border crisis affecting Walton County?
So I'll give you a real world example that about economics here. The price of drugs has dropped in the last 7 years from about 7,000, 8,000 a pound for ice and fentanyl to about 1,000, 1,500, because it's flooding across the border. So anybody tells you it's not having an effect locally does not understand what they're talking about. And that's not a political, Republican, Democrat, whatever. You cannot have unrestricted access. No sovereign nation of the world allows unrestricted migration in and out of the border, period. And it does have real world effects. So last week, we seized, I think our Vice Narcotics Unit,
6 pounds of methamphetamine.
Pounds of methamphetamine, and along with a pound of fentanyl, enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in Walton County, right? That's madness. That's absolute madness.
Yeah.
So, yes, there's a real world effect to this.
And along with one of those arrests.
With a fully automatic weapon. Fully automatic weapon with that. So.
Yeah. I hope that answers your question, Stephen.
Sorry.
If you have a follow-up, just let us know. Brittany said that she'll email us about the Mac Bayou Mirror. Ollie Walker, just jumping on, 2 questions.
Okay.
Is there any update on the LSV accident on 30A a couple days ago? Your alert made me, made comment of a rollover with multiple injuries. I believe Florida Highway Patrol came out and investigated that,
Correct.
but I will follow up.
I'm not sure the status of the individuals involved.
Yeah. And number 2, is there a map somewhere showing what beaches on 30A are still open to the public and what now are private? Thank you.
Okay. The TDC is supposed to be putting out maps of where public and private beaches are at. I have only seen an overlay at this point. I have not seen the full survey, and that's not me trying to be cryptic about it. I'm a little confused about it as well. I did get a chance to look at what we were given, I think, in this last week, but the official surveys have not been done. Mm-hmm. So we're still certainly waiting on that. I would point you to the TDC at this point. I am assuming they have made that public. That is the best I understand. I know that they were working on signs to put out there, and I know everybody does not like signs. I can respect that, but I don't have any say in that. But they are putting out and agreeing to a uniform sign what is going to be out there.
That's going to direct people to public beach.
Public beaches. Unfortunately, it's also going to say what is private beach as well too. Some people are going to use those on the private beaches, but they have an ordinance that says what the sign has got to look like. And so that's what they're waiting to get some of that stuff
and
out.
When you say TDC,
the tourist development,
tourism department of Walton County is supposed to be coming up with some sort of language that they can put out that kind of explains where people can go.
Listen, I can understand a level of frustration about, hey, here we are in end of February and we're doing this, but there were some court things that had to get shaken out first, and there were another 200, I think, properties that were added to the settlement agreement, which gave the public some level of access to those properties as well, too. We're currently in the process of hiring 10 beach community service officers. Those folks are going to be onboarding. We're trying to get those people trained in the next week or two, next couple of weeks, not next week or two, but next couple of weeks to get them out there to assist. And I'm hoping to have some impact with that. We just ask you to be patient with our beach community service officers and our deputies. It's a learning time for all of us. So.
Yeah, for sure.
And remember, the deputy doesn't get to decide whether or not they like this law.
Yeah. Kathy Hull, how does Walton County enforce the state statute, the Florida State Title, Chapter 877.22 curfew law for minors? How do you enforce it?
I'd have to read it. I don't even know what she's referencing.
Talk a little bit about how we would impose a curfew in general.
Curfews are essentially extremely difficult to impose because they have to be a uniform across the legislative body that opposes them. So in this case, it would have to be from Paxton to the beaches. Essentially, that's the short version of it. The second thing, you have to be able to enforce that what you're saying you do. For instance, I can impose curfews, but I can't pick and choose on who they're enforced and how they're done. It has to be blanket if I do something, right? Mm-hmm. So the county always has the opportunity to look at it, but understand they don't get to say only south of the bay, which is, I think, part of the problem there. I think that's where the rub and the concern from that is. So,
because you would essentially have to enforce a countywide curfew.
Is exactly correct.
Which
exactly
is
correct.
Nearly impossible. Yeah. Derek Gossett, how many warrants has the narcotics department served this year?
I don't know the answer to that. They've been very busy.
Yeah.
They've been very busy. I can tell you that we're in pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds of narcotics, different fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine. So they're an extremely productive unit. Now our focus is always on those larger sums where we can get to, and I can tell you the list of people we're trying to get to is extensive. It is extensive. We've got a lot of people out there. We've been blessed to have some really quality, experienced vice investigators. We have some folks that if you saw their resume, you would be well impressed. This is not only the first place many of them have worked. The individual who runs that does a great job, is well respected, former DEA task force members, and they do a good job. And more importantly than anything else, they get cases that meet successful prosecution, which is, listen, you can do some things cowboy, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get successful prosecution. We have some very successful prosecution results.
Yeah, and I think that's something that the public has a hard time seeing sometimes because they see the initial arrest, but they don't see the result.
So the other way to think about 10 grams, so let's think about that, let's call it 6 pounds of ice for just a second. There are 32 grams in an ounce, right? There are basically 28 ounces in a pound. There are 2.2 pounds in a kilo, right? Give or take. So if you say that we've done something in the neighborhood of 4 kilos of ice in the last, probably a month. That's something that used at smaller than a half-gram instrument. So we might could have arrested 1,000 plus users and it would take that many individual users to get to the point to get what they stopped in basically a month, which is pretty incredible, really. But it's also sad because, again, this stuff is flowing across the border. It is absolutely driving the price down, and it's killing people, absolutely killing people. It was 800-something fentanyl pills that we took in last week, just in one incident. So.
Yeah, and that's a trafficking amount of.
It's way drugs. Into traffic. It's way in. That is spend the rest of your life in prison amount.
Yeah, but as far as the specific warrants, some of those are search warrants. Some of those are just warrants signed by a judge for arrest. And I can try to pull some of those stats for you, just in general.
I'm more concerned with the volume of the drugs they take in than I am anything.
Yeah. Tim White. As always, the deputies working the road do a phenomenal job day in and day out and don't get enough recognition. Looking forward with the different apartments being built and homes and the rapid growth of South Walton, is there a possibility that 98 will turn into 6 lanes from Sandestin to Panama City Beach?
That's a great question. I think it's certainly reasonable, but I have given up predicting when they're going to do it because, again, go into Freeport. In 20, that is the fastest growing city, percentage-wise, in the state of Florida, is the city of Freeport. and 20's got to be 4-laned. 20 absolutely needs to be 4-laned for a certain distance for sure.
Needed to be 4-lane.
98 needed to be that's right. 98 needed to be 6-lane. You know, so I don't know the answer to that. I don't know that they're planning it, but boy, they sure need to.
You know, I was thinking the other day, I was driving to work, and I've been here. I'm coming up on my 9-year anniversary. And when I first started working here, 331 was 1 lane each direction.
That's right. Well, listen.
In 9 years doesn't feel like that long.
I'll back it up. Just wasn't that long ago. They used to call that Bloody 98. It was a 2-lane. And some
331?
No, U.S. Highway 98.
Oh, yeah.
They just call it Bloody 98. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they still do.
Well, it's not so much that. It's so much now. It's just rear ends you 98. You know. So
yeah. Okay. All right. Laura Layton, do you ever think that there will be a law passed for no size of any kind of hole to be dug on the beach?
Yeah, that's really sad. I'm sure she's referencing the child that passed away died this weekend in a beach hole collab. Died a couple of days in a beach hole collab. That happens.
Where was that?
Unfortunately, it was here in Florida. I don't remember exactly where it's at, but it happens unfortunately pretty regularly. People don't see the risk in it. I don't know the answer to that. I think one of the problems is people do not see the risk in it, and it can get away from them so quickly. You know, we've had it happen here years ago, but it's just terribly tragic in this case. Child, there were the parents.
You know, and it's sad too, and you just hit the nail on the head. Like, people don't see the risk in it.
Sure.
We have people driving low speed vehicles on Highway 98.
Yeah, every time, and they're terribly upset. And listen, the truth is, do you really need a law to tell you that's a horrible idea to drive a golf cart on US 98?
I mean,
and they're mad when we tow their vehicle. We tow hundreds of low speed vehicles a year, right? And just the absolute shock and incredulity of the people when we tow their vehicle, and why are we doing this to them, and we're so mean. And
that is something that you feel like is dangerous. Whereas when you're on the beach, like, oh, okay, I'm just having fun. I'm just doing this. Sure. Yeah. And people just don't realize how incredibly dangerous it can be.
Absolutely. So I don't know that, I get back to her questions. I don't know that they'll pass a law against that. Man, it's just very sad.
Yeah.
Very sad.
I actually did not hear that. So, Stephen Chansey, is the quality of drugs dropping the price, or is it getting more potent? How many people from the southern border crisis have you arrested, and how many deported?
That's like 4 questions, and I'm not sure. The only thing I will tell you is there's been no reduction in the level of quality. In fact, it's a little bit of the converse. We actually, one of our guys commented on the quality of the ice. The other thing is you have fentanyl laced in a lot of this stuff. So there's there's the level of risk, super risk involved in that. We don't deport people. Immigration and Custom Enforcement deports people if they have warrants. So we're not involved in deporting. How often do they come get it? Out of every 100 people that are arrested that are here illegally that we arrest, about 7 are actually deported.
Yeah.
Or actually detained to face deportation hearings.
Yeah.
That may give you some kind of idea. So it's actually not many.
Yeah. And, for some clarity there, if ICE does place a hold on someone we have in custody, they only have a limited amount of time.
They have to be within 48 hours, or we're required by law to release them past that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I can be sued. And we had a sheriff in Florida here sued for $2 million because they held on to the detainer longer than 48 hours.
Yeah. Ollie Walker, thank you. Just a quick follow-up question.
Okay.
How will the Walton County Sheriff's Office enforce this during spring break and the summer season? Her question, I'm going to scroll back up really quick.
Her or him?
Her, I don't know. You're right. I shouldn't make assumptions because my name is technically a boy's name. She's talking about low-speed vehicles and then showing the beaches on 30A are open to the public. Like, have they put out a sign or anything about that? And she's asking, how is it going to be enforced during spring break?
We're it's kind of a two-part thing. One, we're going to be reasonable in the approach we're doing. We're not going to be throwing people in jail just because they step over on private property. We're going to go down there. We're going to mediate it, resolve, ascertain whether or not it's private property, and whether or not is that part of the settlement agreement. Again, keep in mind we're talking about 30 properties out of 900 plus properties that are actually settlement properties? And or is it public beach access or public beach property? We're just going to have to go down there every time, quite frankly. I mean, it's just there's literally no way around it for us at this point.
Yeah. Richard Drago says, we appreciate you and your entire agency.
Thank you.
Ted Brown wants to know how successful the flock cameras are, and will there be more installed in the county anytime soon?
Yes, and yes, they're successful. You know, and I think I've been a little bit of an open, express my reticence with them. Maybe it's my decrepitude in my age. I don't know that I don't.
Oh.
Yeah. So I got challenged to use that word in a sentence tonight. So there you go. Tag. Anyway, so they've been successful. There's no question about it. You know, we had a pursuit the other night that came from a stolen vehicle that, you know, unfortunately ended up being like a 100-mile pursuit.
Yeah, and from 20 to Okaloosa
from 20
County,
into
285, I-10,
and these individuals
331.
were armed. It set off a pretty long manhunt after the pursuit.
Yeah.
You know, and I think many of you may have saw we were able to use drone technology to help locate. We had a deputy from the jail. I think it was
Houston Wright.
Houston Wright would you know, who was just detention deputy of the quarter too.
He was.
Yeah, as well. So but came out and ran a drone for us, and they were able to locate those individuals and locate the firearm involved in that. Of course, that's always a partnership, right? It was us, the Florida Highway Patrol. I think Defeat Springs PD was there helping at some point. Holmes County,
and both the correctional institutions.
and both the
correctional.
So a lot of people are involved trying to see. This is not just us, but it's a good coordinated effort. But it was a nice use of technology, and you know, we were able to put those folks in jail, and that was a juvenile as well too, by the way. So madness.
Great. Brenna McAllister, what is the possibility of increased nighttime patrols through neighborhoods on 393 north of 98? Nuisance houses with nefarious activities, possible drugs, and prostitution, human trafficking has greatly increased in the last 6 to 8 months.
So I have to balance that. It's not what I know, it's what I can prove, right? So what I would say to you is, the short answer is yes on patrols. We'll definitely take a work on that. Your lieutenant is listening, I'm sure, as we sit here. The second part of that is go ahead and call us every time, even if it seems like we need to know so we can document what calls we're getting, what specific addresses, you know, and those kind of things, so we can build a little better understanding of who and what we're dealing with. So don't hesitate to call us. What you pay your taxes for?
Yeah. On YouTube, 1811 Steve says, with the AT&T outage today, can you discuss other communication options, i.e. text to connect the sheriff's office, using Wi-Fi calling, etc.?
We do that. So we're one of the few agencies actually in the state of Florida that we rolled that out a few years ago. So that's
it feels like a few, but I think it was 2017. It was 2 years after I got here.
So we do have a couple of different options across there to reach out. You know, the problem with being so interconnected in cell, I think sometimes that's what people
they
are used to.
on
but
it.
You certainly can Wi-Fi call over through us, so that absolutely works. But yeah, it was a problem. I mean, it was a problem today for sure.
Yeah, and it was.
Well, that was a nationwide problem too, right?
Nationwide,
it was a nationwide problem. Yeah.
Yep. Tristan Cluis on YouTube said, "Just wanted to thank you for answering my questions last time, Sheriff.
Oh, thank you.
Wasn't sure you would, but you went right at it. Well done, putting my faith back in law enforcement.
I hope so. I don't remember what they were, but they sounded like they must have been tough. So I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah. Angie on YouTube, are there any driving schools available for teens in our county?
So yeah, the sheriff's office actually runs what's called Teen Safety Challenge, Teen Safety Driver Challenge. It's a great program. You can look it up on our website at waltonso.org. Corey's gonna be really happy because I remembered. I can never remember that. But yeah, look it up. I think it's a great. If you have a teen in there, it's wonderful to help you with the insurance as well too. So it's a great thing that our SRDs put on.
Yeah. And Deputy Eric Hartzell I'm kind of throwing his name out there, but he's in charge of coordinating those. And we get rave reviews from
everybody does. Yeah, we get a lot
every time.
I'd love to have driver's ed back in the county too. So that'd be a great thing to.
Yeah, I took driver's ed.
Yeah, me too.
Andrea Breeze on YouTube. The county does have an ordinance defining the maximum size of holes that can be dug on our beaches.
Yeah, but so just kind of a point of clarification. That's more of people are afraid of falling in the holes, and I think what we were talking about earlier is this concern about it's actually the really small holes that when I say really small, that's the problem with a cave in on these things where they get to a certain depth, and sometimes it's the smaller ones, believe it or not.
Yeah.
It's just a bad it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
I should have clarified that, but yes, she's right.
Okay. So Ollie was referring to the private beach issue when she was asking about spring break, so you hit it. Roy Rodriguez says, Tropical Way in Freeport, Highway 331 has some crazy drivers constantly. And he's asking if we can patrol that area a little bit more.
Sure. I know your lieutenant's on here. Lieutenant Bart Smith is there, and I know he's taking notes as well too.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm
laughing. I'm looking at Corey because she's studying. I know she's about to.
I'm trying to find questions. Catherine Loren says, "What's up with all the sirens and the helicopters heading west on 90?" I'm actually not sure of that because we're sitting in here. My phone hasn't rang, so I'm hoping that it's not anything too serious.
Yeah.
It may be some of the fires we were having earlier.
Yeah. Our fire rescue folks have been super busy.
They have been busy today.
Multiple fire, structure fire. Earlier today, 2 today actually, as a matter of fact.
I think one was an outside fire, and
one
then
was a structure fire.
Yeah.
So our fire rescue folks have been very busy. I think one of the things that has come to, boy, I hate that we need it, but it's done a great job, has been our air med. Our air ambulance is I think saving lives. There's any question. I think we're flying. I looked the other day. I think they're flying something like 45 times a month.
Yeah.
That tells you something.
Walton Air Rescue, the helicopter.
Walton Air Rescue, the Sheriff's Office, Air Medical.
Yeah.
That's really making an impact on people's lives. I mean, again, I hate that we need it, but boy, what a great thing to have when you need it in the distances. I was supposed to actually call Dr. Wynn back today at North Walton Doctors Medical, and so that hospital is getting ready to open there. And I understand that their office space of doctors is already filled up, and they got some great. I mean, I know when they were explaining to me, I think I was speaking to Dr. Ward or Dr. Wynn the other day. All of a sudden you got a cardiologist now, and you've got an orthopedist coming. You've got all this stuff, which is going to be great for the Defuniak Springs, Paxton, Mossy Head, the Ponce de Leon area. That's fabulous to get those folks back up. So we're excited to hear about them getting open. Yeah. Good stuff.
Great. So, Catherine, you may have been hearing our helicopter, for example, our medical helicopter. Mr. Chansey says, do you see a day here in Walton County when meth possession of less than 2 grams, I think he means, being a ticketed offense like in California?
No, never. Not as long as I'm here.
Okay. Etta says Teen Driver Challenge is amazing. Good. James, Lieutenant Pittman says Teen Driver Challenge is this Saturday at Admin. Derek Gossett, if kiddos get an A after doing driver's ed on 331.98, that should be your first free insurance pass.
Right. That's absolutely true. That's madness down there.
Yeah.
It's why I don't have any hair. My girls, when we're learning to drive, man. Whew,
yeah.
98.
Etta Elizabeth says, did I hear the sheriff's office will be keeping the helicopter at the new hospital in Defuniak?
Not at this point. We'll always look at where the best location, at some point. I think we've talked about trying to put it there in the future. We just have to kind of balance that. There has to be a pad and some of those things. So, yeah, it may very well ultimately go down there. It's just not there today.
Okay. Michael Dukes, please describe specifically what property categories exist on the beach in the eyes of your deputies this spring. Private beach, settlement property with a transitory zone, and public beach. Yeah. But what about interveners and non-interveners and how their properties are treated?
Okay. So very, very specific question. But one of the things I'd say is we actually put this policy online so people could see it because that's a very...
Well, we went live during a meeting.
Live, explain it. But so, that is a policy we also put up so that it's open to the public so they can see it with written examples, because I think sometimes the picture works better to help with that. You essentially described what's involved there. Here's the short, I think there is no short version to this. I mean, the bottom line is you have private property, which is fully private, does not offering any access to that property. That includes transversing that property above, I hate to say it, the mean high tide water line, but that's the law, right? There are probably, I'm guessing just off the top of my head, something in the neighborhood of 700 to 800, call it 700 properties like that. There are approximately 230, 240 properties that are part of a settlement agreement that allow the public limited access during certain times and limited use during certain times of the day. That we have those marked on a GPS unit that we can see.
And those
here's what some of the
properties are not right next to each other.
And those properties are not all necessarily adjoining each other, so it's important to understand that.
And most of them are east of Topsail.
They're all east of Topsail. Topsail, there's no real issue west of Topsail because the beaches have been renourished there. So everything is really east of Topsail. I kind of hesitate to explain too much here because it's going to get so confusing for people. The short thing is anything in the water submerged is sovereign to the state of Florida. So you can walk down in the water. That's the short version of that. I've spoken to quite no small number of private property owners who are not part of the settlement. And I think by and large, most of those folks are not going to call. They want the normal the use of their beach. Don't jump on my terms if you don't like the term I use, but that is what it says under the law. I don't think most private property owners are going to be calling to have people removed from the beach because somebody's down there absent behavior that is offensive to them. But I can't tell you that some won't. We've had numerous property owners call and say that they are hiring security guards and they don't want anybody on their quote beach. There's nothing Mike Adkinson can do about that. That's the current state of the law and where we're at in Walton County. But to be clear, that does not apply in the water, right? If you get down there as a conflict between you and a security representative or a private property owner, the short, easy version of this is call the sheriff's office. Let us send somebody down there. We will mediate. We'll pull it up on a GPS, and we will figure out whether or not this is actually private property, right? I'm asking for people to be patient, and I already know this is a problem because there's such passionately held beliefs on this on both sides. Understand we're going to try and mediate it the best we can, but there are essentially 4 different classifications of property down there. And that's why you have to explain it to people first. You can't go there and just start arresting people, nor should a private property owner just start throwing people off, right? Because what we've said to the private property owners that are hiring security, and they're calling us and saying, listen, we have security up here and we're not going to allow people to pass. And what I've said to you is you better be right. I mean, you may legally be able to do it, but you had better be right because you accept the liability of doing that. So it's a very difficult situation, and it's very difficult for us to mediate. We're going to do the best we can.
Yeah.
I hope that wasn't too obtuse, but it's a complex issue.
Well, I just think like huge picture, like these deputies typically have had to deal with, you learn so much. Yeah. They've been through the academy, the whole statute book.
They've been steeped in this, unfortunately.
And this is something that they've had to really learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Since
and everybody has very strong opinions about it. I mean, there's strong. Do not be mistaken. There's strong opinions on both sides of this.
Yeah.
So,
Ted Brown wants to know: does the sheriff's office pay for the helicopter? Is there a reduced cost to Walton counties who use it? If so, can the helicopter be used for law enforcement missions?
All right, again, that's a 3-part question. So the part is essentially it operates us as, it doesn't actually cost us anything from that standpoint. We provide personnel for it. So we have our medics that are on the flight that are Walton County Fire Rescue employees. And what was the last question? Is there a reduced cost to Walton County citizens? Not specific to Walton County. What it does do is that one of the things that we were able to negotiate with this company, and I think they did a great job with this, to negotiate insurance rates so that we don't get $18,000 and $20,000 bills to our residents. So in other words, they are billing rates that are acceptable to your insurance, normal insurance, which I think is super important. Because that wasn't the case, by the way, in the past. A few years ago, it wasn't like that. People were getting some outrageous bills. These folks have went out of their way to say this is the way we're going to do this to be fair, so nobody gets hit with these major bills like that.
Yeah. And
We're
the
one of
last,
only a handful of places in the nation doing what's called a P3, a public-private partnership. And I think this is going to be a model that is worth replicating. Because it's absolutely showing its dividends.
yeah. The last part of his question was, can the helicopter be used for law enforcement missions?
I don't want to use it for law enforcement mission. Its primary mission is the health and safety and well-being of people in regard to medical, and they need to be. Could we pull them into service to do something? We could, but we're not going to do that because that would be like putting an ambulance out to go drive around looking for somebody. I need it to be where if somebody's child, somebody's father, whatever mother needs that ambulance, we're not going to be playing around with that.
Yeah.
It had to be bad.
And one of your chiefs in fire rescue said, and no balance billing.
And no balance billing, that's correct.
Yeah,
So
explain what balance billing
so
is.
So the insurance, we don't send a separate cost to you past what's paid by insurance. So whatever the remainder due doesn't get sent to you. That's handled between the insurance.
Okay.
So
And one
it's
of our
a really good deal to the citizens of Walton County.
And one of our deputies, Benjamin Jacobs, just texted me and said that there's a tall 2-story wood frame structure fire. That's what they're responding to.
Yeah. It's a busy week for our fire rescue folks as well because they're doing their PAT test this week. So they're out there doing their physical abilities test this week. So our fire rescue folks are out hustling this week doing their physical training and their continual training they do all the time. And we got a quality folks.
Sorry, I'm trying to go through to find a question on YouTube. Shredded Wheat, I love Shredded Wheat. That's his username. Great job to Walton sheriffs. Is the Walton County Jail overflowing? A repeat felon of cocaine was released after 2 years when lawyers mentioned that Florida has higher jail sentences. Our jail is not full.
No. We're not overcrowded at all. But I will say we're one of the few in the area that are not. There are many here that are past capacity. We are not one of them. We're in good shape.
Yeah, and we were talking today. We just had our major retire from
John
the jail.
Moore retired after just about 29 years in this business.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
And
Congratulations
a few
to
of
John.
a few of us were talking about how far to plan out when deciding when to expand a jail.
Yeah. So there's a cost to not doing something right the first time, right?
Yeah.
So right now we're looking at about a $40 million radio project, and the reality is, had it been built like we should have, like we knew it had to be built in 2005, the cost would be significantly lower now. Mm-hmm. But we didn't do it then, right? And so you want to be conservative in the way you handle your money, but at the same time, don't step over a dollar to pick up a dime. You still have things that you have to do. And so what was 12 towers should have been built, 13 towers should have been built back in 2005. Now looks like 22 towers, and so we've got this increased cost at today's construction prices. Yeah. And some of that was because people said, hey, we don't want to spend this money. Well, you're going to spend it. You just got to decide, pay me now, pay me later. It's going to get done.
Yeah.
And so now we're facing this situation where we have to build this thing, and we're in the process of doing it now. And, hopefully by doing this now, we'll mitigate costs to taxpayers in the future.
Yeah.
It's generational money being spent there.
Yeah, but so much of it you really have to foreshadow what you're going to need in 5 and 10 years.
Absolutely. And so to kind of let people know how we do that, we budgeted $9 million in our budget. Our budget's roughly $100 million, give or take. But we went ahead and started budgeting the cost to pay for this radio system now, so that we get this thing taken care of. So it's got to be done, and unfortunately, it's taken precedence on so many other things.
Yeah. Okay. David Hollifield, thank you for the increased presence that we've been seeing on Highway 20 West. The sign is also helping. They've put a sign out there. Steve Sunday is on YouTube listening. Hi,
Look at Steve. Love that technology.
Yeah. Marilyn Willott, why is the main concern on the beach so necessary? They bought a house on the beach knowing this, and they need to mark their own property lines. Just like a home not on the water, trespass. I just think it's a really complicated issue for everybody.
It doesn't even do me good to proffer opinion on it. I'm bound by the law, and I've got to follow the law as it is.
Yeah. Josette Rhodes. Hi, Josette. Excellent about no balance billing. Well negotiated. Thank you.
Well, I think, listen, I'm not going to take credit. Chief Tim Turner and Chief Tracy Voss really went out there and spent a lot of time working. We flew out to Colorado, actually this time last year, trying to get this thing nailed down. And I said, listen, I'm not going to Colorado unless this is taken care of. Because, and they Air Methods did a great job of giving Walton County a really unique deal. Now, here's the thing. Is it replicatable? Is it scalable? In other words, I think the model used here maybe be able to use somewhere else. And I think it's a great example of how public-private partnerships should work. Yeah. So I'm very pleased with the way this thing has worked out.
Yeah. Ted Brown, is Lieutenant Wendell, Teddy actually got promoted. He's a lieutenant now. Still the point of contact to ask about requesting flock cameras in neighborhoods. Can a private citizen pay for a camera on if it's not in the budget?
Yes, and yes. Yeah. Also, Lieutenant Bart Smith, if you're in the Freeport area, so District Lieutenant, which if you don't know, if you're listening, you don't know who your District Lieutenant is, you can go to waltonso.org. That's twice in one night. I've nailed the website. And we have pictures of your lieutenant, what district, so you can look at the map, you can see where you're at, and with that you can
reach out to them too. Their contact information's there. Yeah. And that's just waltonso.org, and you go under law enforcement, and it says
did you throw that up at the same
your
time
district lieutenant,
so they can see that?
Yeah, I can maybe do that.
Yeah, we've been talking about this technology.
I'm going to try to.
Yeah. I don't want to throw you a curveball, but we've always talked about trying to be able to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. Kim Thrasher, just wondering why each time I email you and request a return call, you're claiming you don't get it, but someone contacts me on your behalf. In the last live, you were not getting my emails, so I explained to you again, and you still have not called me personally. And I think she followed up with some names in regards to that.
I'll look at when I get out there. Now, it could be one of a multitude of reasons, but I'll be happy to look at it.
And I know you're shocked because it's only 6:30. We've been on the air almost an hour. We're caught up on questions.
Amazing.
There was a few things that we wanted to cover. I think that we did not the least of which is we pushed out safety net over the last couple of weeks, and that's really grown in popularity. We had a wrong-way driver, a drunk wrong-way driver stopped the other night.
Absolutely.
And he was arrested, and we actually arrested a general contractor for embezzlement last week as well. So we've had a lot of really good things happening.
We released the shooting from about a year and a half ago.
Yes.
At this point, that just because
my goodness, 2022.
2 years ago.
Wow.
2 years ago, so.
The I-10 shooting video.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep. And I think a lot of people were surprised to find that the robbery ended up really not being a robbery at all.
Oh, it was a scam, is what it was. Yeah, they were in cahoots, as they say.
Yeah, cahoots.
They were in cahoots.
Yeah.
Waiting for a chance to use that word tonight, too.
Yeah. So. But we're caught up on question.
Well, listen, we try to get you answers to questions. Some of the things are complex. I always tell Corey, I try to be balanced when we answer this, and we try to give you some things that make sense, try to answer your questions. But you also have to acquiesce that sometimes you may not like the answer, and I that's just the truth, the business I'm in. And sometimes I don't even like the answer. Sometimes I have to tell you things I don't like too. So that's
Ted,
part of it.
Ted is asking what safety net is, and that's where our dispatchers make calls in the morning.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we check on folks that maybe otherwise, families out of town, maybe don't have somebody that can look in on them, and we try to make sure that our disadvantaged, maybe some people's suffering some challenges, that somebody goes by and checks on them, make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
And or calls or whatever the situation may be, and very, very similar to our Handle with Care program, which is for children primarily. However, we also extend that to adults that are non-ambulatory and we look to try and do that. And look, we can even, I haven't had a chance to talk to Chief Crawford, but I feel like I could say that we would, certainly if they referred somebody over to us, we would put somebody on the Handle with Care the same way. In fact, I need to go by and talk to Chief Crawford about that too, just as kind of maybe a joint expansion into that work, because I'm sure they're going to come in. South Walton Fire District is going to come into contact with people that maybe we haven't seen recently and get them on that list as well. So Corey's going to remind me when we get off air to I'm going to call Chief Crawford and those folks and see about, do they have some folks they want to recommend for safety net or handle with care. So it's a great program.
Yeah. Safety net's cool because the dispatchers like create relationships with these people. They talk to them once every day and they look forward to it. So it's kind of a cool thing. And you can find out more about those programs, all of those programs on our website at waltonso.org. Just go under community programs and it'll give you kind of an overview of what that program is.
Awesome.
So
anything else?
Spring break is like right around the corner.
Yep,
it's coming in hot.
Yeah,
so we encourage everyone to try and stay patient.
Yep.
And
there will be crowds.
Yeah.
There will be loud kids. There will be people that's not going to change. But, our goal is to mitigate and manage this and to try and limit size of disruptive crowds and to try and, we talked about limited beach accesses in certain places and limited, people getting down at certain certain times of night. But we're going to try a different approach, but there's a lot of people working. I think I looked the other day, I think I was spending $600,000 just in overtime in the next few weeks. So but that's what you pay your tax dollars for. So we're going to get out there and get after it. And
the green will be seen.
Yeah, the green will be seen. You'll see some unhappy deputies, I'm sure, because I canceled everybody's days off, made mandatory overtime. So it's unfortunate, but that's what we have to do to get it done. So anyway, good stuff.
So we'll check in with you guys.
Yeah, we'll see you guys
month.
back in a couple of weeks. If you have any questions, as always, email us. We'll be happy to try and follow up with you and get you an answer to the best of our ability to do so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.